Welcome to Therapist Spotlight by Positive Space Consulting. My name's Emma. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the office manager, everything person here at Positive Space, and today I'm going to be the host of the show. This series is focused on our community of therapists here at Positive Space, and every episode is focused on an individual team member. So you get to know them better, learn a little bit about them, a little bit of their quirks, what their therapy style is, and so you have a little bit more information before your consult, or if you want to decide if you'd like to see them. Positive Space Consulting is by and for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and we are chosen family owned and operated, and we are founded by an amazing queer and disabled woman. She's fabulous. So before we begin the interview, I'm going to pass it on to Gavin Bajimel, who's going to do our land acknowledgement.
Welcome to Therapist Spotlight. My name is Gavin, and I use he and they pronouns. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land we are on today. Positive Space Consulting recognizes that its practice and the contributions of its community of practitioners take place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. We recognize the 46 treaties and other agreements that cover this territory, now called Ontario. Today, we are in Trinity Bellwoods Park, home to many diverse nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, Inuit, and Métis. Today, the province of Ontario is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Each nation is unique in their worldviews, language, and histories, and we gather here in the spirit of openness with a commitment to continue to recognize and reflect upon the important work ahead. We are committed to advocating for all of the requests by Indigenous people of this land to be granted immediately by our government. We ask you to join us in honoring this history and in moving forward in partnership and collaboration as we learn and unlearn together.
Who are you, and what is one interesting fact about yourself?
Hi, my name is Adrian. My pronouns are she, they. I am a registered social worker with a master's in social work. And an interesting fact about me is I play Elden Ring in a competitive format called Bingo. So yeah, it's like old people bingo mixed with like new gaming stuff.
What brought you to Positive Space Consulting, PSC?
So I was doing community mental health work as a social worker, case manager, working with folks who were in acute and prolonged psychosis, working with folks in crisis spaces, substance use spaces, union work as well, union organizing and advocacy. But what brought me to PSC was kind of like a really good opportunity. I was working part-time. I wanted to look for some extra income, and I just saw that there was a really queer sounding practice looking to hire some folks. And I'm like, that may be pretty fitting with who I am. So yeah, I was just excited to work for a queer practice and start doing something a little different. And that was 2 years ago. So now here we are.
Who do you support? Age and demographic.
Yeah, so I support folks typically between the ages of 16 to above. And I think my average age is 16 to maybe like 35, 40. And I support all sorts of folks in the 2S LGBTQIA community. I support folks in kink and open relationships, poly relationships, relationship anarchy. And I support folks who experience all sorts of different intersectionalities as well. Some folks who are experiencing chronic pain, disability. So it's a pretty wide range.
What kind of vibe do you bring to your sessions? And what kind of support do you offer?
Yeah, so I'd like to bring for the vibes idea, like a pretty authentic support. I think as a neurodiverse person, I've gone through a lot of my own self-reflection and my own self-discovery of what it means to be authentic and what the concept of like an authentic self is, and how neurodiverse folks have to struggle often to feel like they're able to be authentic in their own spaces or in other spaces. So I try and bring a really like authentic person into the space and invite folks to take the same type of energy as well. And for support that I offer, it's mostly like, I would say, like, there's like the therapeutic ways I work, like I use narrative therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. But I think in a broader sense, we know that like therapy, what makes therapy work and what makes therapy really successful is the ability for folks to feel safe and included and welcome in their environment, and that they connect with the professionals that they're working with. And so I try and focus on the relationship first and make sure the clients that I'm connecting with yeah, just feel like they can be comfortable in themselves and that they get to know me a little bit as well, so that they can feel like they're trusting who they're working with too.
What are your most asked questions and your approach during consults?
So for consults, I have like a two-way street of information that way. I invite folks to get to know me, like ask me any questions they want to know about who I am, my journey as a queer person, my journey as a trans person, as a neurodiverse person. But I also like to kind of obviously get to know a little bit about who they are. I think one of the most asked questions I get is like, how do I understand working with neurodiverse folks in therapy? I think a lot of the folks that I've worked with have, of course, seen therapists historically. A lot of them have had, experiences with like cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, but have really struggled to connect with their therapist because it was so focused on like the process of the procedure of therapy instead of the process of connecting and being with the therapist. And so I really kind of off the bat like to let folks know that I'm more interested in having that type of relational space they can feel safe and welcome and themselves instead of necessarily exactly what modes I work with. But of course, like I'm trained and I have the ways of working with people that I do.
What topics have interested you the most lately as a therapist and as a social worker?
Yeah, so this was a tricky question actually, because I feel like there's a lot of topics all the time. And so like lately it was like, what does that mean? My brain went really, really specific with that. But I've been doing a lot, of course, of my own experiencing of grieving. And so a lot of what I've been interested in and focusing on is like grief, but not in just the way that we think about grief with like a direct experience of loss, like someone dying, for example, but it's how grief is a part of how a lot of we experience the world. Whether that's like grief because we experience a lot of isolation from community or we don't have community. And this is really common for, a lot of the queer and the chronic pain and disabled folks that I work with. So a lot about grief and how it can show up in different pockets in our lives. Whether we exactly put a name to it or not is the other thing, but I think it's more of a common experience than we may think.
How are you challenging westernized norms of therapy in your practice?
Yeah, so I think one really practical way I like to do that is through like an easy example is like duty to report. So, of course, like as a registered professional, I have to report things to like the emergency services or whatever. You say yes if I'm concerned about harm or something with a brand new child. But this is what I maybe try to introduce this point in my consults as well, is my role is to work with folks, of course, in the scope of that duty to report piece, but in a way that is like decentered around like jumping to that first. Like for example, my goal is to make sure folks feel like they can talk to me about thoughts that they're having of self-harm or of suicide, for example, and not be worried that my first response is going to be, okay, we have to call 911. I've worked in community mental health. I've worked with folks who have unfortunately been pretty hurt by having some pretty harmful 911 interactions when they were at their lowest points. And really what they just needed is someone to like talk with them while they were in a cab on the way to the hospital, and so they can admit themselves and feel safe. I used to do that work with folks in person. I've obviously it's harder to do that when I'm online. So I think that's one big way I'm destabilizing some of that Western piece, is like getting that autonomy back while still making sure folks are safe. And I think another big part too is the like solution-focused way that Western therapy is often trained. I mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy earlier. That's a lot of that sort of therapeutic work and the training that folks get and the ways that folks experience therapy in like the public system even is very like quick. EAP programs are 3 sessions. There's like solution-focused clinics. Like 1 sessions are like, crisis sessions, for example, where you get to see somebody once and then maybe see a different person the next time. That's pretty hard to form like a good relationship where you feel safe and connected with a therapist when you're bouncing between different people every time you need support. And so I think that's a big reason why I focus on that relational communal piece where it's like, I'm neurodiverse, I'm queer, I'm trans, I've dealt with my own I've done my own therapeutic work, and that honesty, I think, is a big part of kind of like destabilizing some of the ways that we're trained as therapists from like the Western worldview.
Tell us about your queer journey.
Yeah, I'm like, where do I start? So I came out in high school as bi, and I was baby queer and, didn't really have like a lot of queer friends in high school. I kind of grew up in like a pretty straight, boring place that way. But in university, I kind of got more curious with gender and different ways of expressing gender. And I think in the last like year and a half, I've sort of shifted away from using they, them to more she, they. And I'm kind of going through my transitioning journey right now, which is really exciting. But I guess like the best way to put it given the monologue about it is that it's been a very complicated and ever-changing process. I think that's kind of a big part of what queerness is it's not static. There's a part, of course, that feels more grounding and truthful to my identity now than it did maybe a decade ago. But with all identity, it's always changing and shifting and has like a sort of a fluidity to it. So I think that's sort of where I am right now. And I'm just excited to see wherever that takes me in the years to come.
Tell us more about your special interests.
So, as I mentioned before, I play a lot of Elden Ring and some other video games too, and I grew up playing sports and other stuff as well, so I have a pretty competitive bone in my body that way. Reduced obviously the toxicity that comes with that over time, but so I'm very much into gaming and to playing different games and perfecting some of those things and feeling challenges and things like that within those games. I have a dog named Pabby, and she's absolutely one of my special interests. She is super smart and really fun, and she's kind of feel like a kid. I think that's good enough for me and have her for the rest of my life that way. I think I'm good that way. And I'm really into political and otherwise philosophical ideas. I watch a lot of political commentary online. I get into a lot of philosophical things that I like to listen to and talk about, for example, the fear of the dark. And so a content creator that went into this whole psychological rabbit hole about the dark through folklore and all this stuff. So yeah, I can rant about it for a while, but I'll try not to. But yeah, I think philosophy, gaming, and then my pet Pabby are probably my top 3 special interests for sure.
The lightning round. Okay, let's try something called the lightning round.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions really quickly and go from there, but we'll see how it goes.
And I don't have the questions, so we'll be good.
Favorite color?
Pink.
Dogs or cats?
Dog.
Favorite video game?
Elden Ring.
First gay crush?
Oh no, that's a hard one. That's a lightning round question? I need to think about that. First gay crush? Oh no. Oh, this really, really awful boy in high school. But I ain't awful because he ended up being an awful person, but I looked at him oh no. That's not, that makes sense now. Yeah.
Okay, favorite snack?
Oh. Damn. These were tricky. Sweet or salty? Or is it can it be either? Or it has to be one favorite?
Whatever you want.
Okay, for salty, I would probably do smart food popcorn, which is really funny because we were eating that earlier today. And for sweet, it had to be anything with peanut butter, Reese's peanut butter cups or anything in that arena. Chocolate and peanut butter is really good. Yeah.
Cool. Spring or summer?
Spring.
Favorite musician?
What is that? I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that.
Name a few.
Okay, top 3. Okay, so Under Oath, been a favorite for a long time. Absolutely, they have to be one of my favorites. Probably New Age Language, obviously Chapel Run, all the queer stuff are. So that's a big one now. And then, I don't know. Probably Jimi Hendrix would have to be a third.
Love.
Yeah, I really his music is something I could listen to forever and never be bored of, and that's what I think of a favorite. Those are 3 artists and one group with Under Oath that I could put on an album by any of them and just love start to finish. So yeah, cool.
Any last words for the folks listening today?
Yeah, just thanks for watching this and thanks for taking the time to get to know me a little bit. I think a part of I hope with the shows that kind of, life is kind of a stumbling experience sometimes, and that's not even means filming, talking about yourself could have a little bit of twists and turns too. But yeah, I'm glad to meet anybody that I meet through this video, and I thank you for watching it.
Hi everyone, Emma here again. I thought I'd hop on real quick just to remind you, if you resonated with the Therapist Spotlight today, or with our practice, why not take a look at our website? All the information is over here at positivespaceconsulting.ca. And while you're there, why not fill out a contact form to have a free 20-minute consult with one of our amazing therapists. We only support folks in Ontario, Alberta, and BC. And if you need some help choosing a therapist, send us some information and I'll send it over to Charlotte, our clinical director, and she'll make a suggestion that you might resonate with. So I hope you have a great day and stay beautiful, queer, and lovely. I hope to hear from you soon. Bye.